comes from. It comes from your gifts and your members' gifts to the foundation from 3 years ago. So shout out to all of you who love our foundation and continue to support it. What else? That's about $10,000 more than we've had in the past. So all the more to do good in our communities. So thank you. This year we have the current Rotary year, 2020-21. I sent an email out to the club presidents, club president-elects. We had about $12,900 left over of VDF that we could spend in our districts that to do good in our local communities. We put a call out a couple weeks ago. We've had one grant that has been approved. That was for the Rotary Club of North Jacks. We've got a couple others in the hopper, but none have actually hit the send button and collected all of the necessary documents. We only have a week to go to spend $5,000. So if your club has something, a project that you can fund immediately this week, buy, purchase, turn around, get receipts for, and get it into the hands of the beneficiary, please reach out. Tim, I'm going to have them reach out to you. Okay. Because you're on this call with us. Please reach out to Tim O'Donnell immediately following this call. His information is in the chat box. We would love to use that $5,000 in our district this year. But we are under a tight time frame in which to do so. So if you have a use, please reach out to Tim. Tim, I am turning it over to you.
All right, thank you, Jeanette. I'm going to share my screen, see if we can get the slides up. All right, can everyone see the slides? Just nod your head. Beautiful, okay. All right. So a few housekeeping things. Excuse me. I'm having allergies today. If I cough or sneeze, excuse me. Please remain muted unless intentionally speaking. We don't want to be disrupting the whole group. Enter questions in the chat session. We're going to try to address them all if we can, if time allows. If not, then when you ask a question, please put your email address or phone number in there as well, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If it's a very, very club-specific question that we don't think will be germane to everyone on the call, we may just decide to answer it later, but questions go in the chat session. And as this chat session is mandatory, if you haven't done so already, please either change the name of your in your Zoom session and post something in the chat window on hello or something like that. Since we've already done that, I'm going to skip this slide about how to change your name in Zoom. Just make sure you click on the chat and put just hello in the chat session if you've changed your name. If not, please put club : your club name and then your name. And that way we can know who's here and give credit to the club so you can apply for grants. All right, today we're going to talk about the type of grants that we have, some of the application requirements, best practices, important dates, which are really important, and then how to access the grant module and show you a demo of walking through a sample grant and how to submit the grant application. So the types of grants we have in the district, there's district grants, which we're talking about today. And they're mostly local projects, but they can be international projects. They do not require an international partner so much. They're intended for smaller projects. You're gonna have to complete them within 6 or 7 months. And we like them to require active Rotarian involvement. Global grants are usually larger, $30,000 plus. They're international by nature, and they can fund different things like vocational training things and things like that. John Caulfield will have more information about that, but today we're talking about the first item, the district grants. Okay. Just want to let you know first, we're going to talk about the share committee. It's been mentioned a few times, so I wanted to say what it was. The share committee is they're the people that review and score the grants and award the amounts. And the committee consists of, as you can read, the foundation chair, myself, district governor, trained for a few years, and then the club representatives from the clubs that really support the foundation and donate a lot to the foundation, which seems fair. They're putting a lot of skin in the game. They get to decide what grants get awarded. If you want to be on that committee, make sure your club donates a lot to the foundation. And it doesn't have to be the highest in the district. You can just be the highest per capita, and you can be on that committee. Trust me, it's fun. Okay, the requirements for a district grant. They must be publicly identified as a Rotary project. We don't just fund another organization's project, it has to be a Rotary project. It has to have humanitarian purpose. So look at the Rotary's 7 areas of focus. And I challenge you to ever find a half-decent project that does not fall within the scope of the 7 areas, and actively involve Rotarians.
So Tim, just to
Yeah.
pause for a second, are you going to review the 7 areas of focus in one of these slides?
No, I'm not. Do you want to quickly go over those?
Let's talk about that.
All
So
right.
this year, we just added environment as our 7th area of focus. So in the district grant cycle, this coming year, 21-22, we are able to approve district grants that focus on environmental sustainability. So a lot of us live in beach communities, we live in near forests, all of those things would qualify if we do a project for environmental sustainability in our communities. In addition to that, maternal and child health, disease prevention, education and literacy, economic and community development, peace and conflict resolution, and water and sanitation. I think that's 7. Is that 7?
I wasn't counting.
Okay.
I was
Got it.
answering a chat thing. So anyway, so yeah, the funding is for one-time projects that, short term, we have to finish them before April, and they can be completed by April 1st. The one-time in nature, if, for example, if you were buying a van for a shelter in 1 year, you can't buy a second van for that shelter the next year. You could buy a van for a different shelter, and that would be okay, but we don't want to repeat the same project year after year. The projects, they must adhere to the Rotary Club guidelines, and the leaders must sign a couple of different documents. There's the Rotary Foundation's Memorandum of Understanding. You have to read the grants, terms and conditions, and the conflict of interest policy document must be signed by the clubs involved, president and president-elect. It's any conflict of interest your club may have has to be explained in a document also uploaded with the grant, but having a conflict of interest does not mean you cannot do the grant. There's lots of Rotarians are involved in many organizations. If somebody in your club happens to be the executive director for a nonprofit and you want to help that nonprofit, that's fine. You just have to make sure that that is documented well, so it's all above board and everyone knows about it.
And just to interrupt you, that
Sure.
when you apply for the grant, please, that is the time to execute the memorandum of understanding and the conflict of interest. Those documents need to be uploaded to the grant file at the time of application. This past year, we had a couple that slipped through, but you need to acknowledge those terms and conditions before your application can be approved.
Actually, it's before they'll even be reviewed by the share committee. They won't get to the share committee unless they have those documents. All the applications are submitted and reported through DACDB. If you have no idea what DACDB is, contact your club's secretary. And if they don't know, feel free to contact me. Our district has an account with DACDB, so everyone can access it. Your club doesn't have to have a separate account with them and payments to them. The amount applied for must be 50% or less of the project. And frequently the awarded amount can be less if there's $150,000 available and we have $200,000 in requests, then some will be fully funded, some will be cut back a little bit, and others may be rejected completely. So, but 50% is the maximum. Some other requirements and considerations. We recommend that the person who submits the grant and files the reports be someone who is in attendance today. It gets a little frustrating when we have these sessions and a couple of members from the club attend, and then someone goes to fill out a grant and they start asking about the requirements. They plan a project that definitely falls outside the guidelines. They're asking for $100,000. And so either make sure that you're the one submitting the grant or sit down with the person who wants to do it and make sure they know what they're doing and guide them through the process. We have some videos that we'll show later that are available to all district members, so anybody can pick them up and read them. and watch them.
Tim, one more point that I want to make regarding the funding of the grant. If this year we had a couple of very large scale projects, we only want you to apply for the portion that Rotary is involved with directly. So if you're renovating an entire park at a city and perhaps Rotary's buying one piece of equipment, we only want you to apply for a grant for that one piece of equipment, not the entire renovation of the project. Try to make it as easy as possible for that project to be completed with the portion that Rotary is actually funding. Don't make your job any more difficult than it is.
Man, she's stealing content from all of my slides. Anyway, so in the lead club must have at least 2 members attend the grant seminar 2. That's in August or September. That's where we'll cover filing the grants and what documents you need to document the grant. When you're awarded a grant, then you'll be invited to that seminar. And big thing, projects cannot spend any money. You can't really start the project until you receive final notification from the district of Rotary's final approval. There's this 2-step process. The district approves it, and we'll tell you about that in probably June. And then after that, you'll find out that the Rotary Foundation has approved it, and that's when you can spend the money. And we'll go through those dates a little bit later too, as well. We expect that the project should be finished and done regardless of the amount of money awarded. If a $10,000 project, you're asking for $5,000. If there's a lot of competition for grants and you're awarded 4, then we expect the project to still be done at the $10,000 level you planned. Just go out and raise the extra $1,000. When you're awarded the grant, if that's a problem, then please let us know so the whole thing can be adjusted. Don't just say, okay, now we're going to do an $8,000 project. So we expect it to be done. The best projects deliver a lot of impact value for the money. They're sustainable, and there's multiple clubs involved. Let's take each one of these really quickly. The bang for the buck value budget, you could have a $20,000 project that helps 2 families in your community, or you could have a $20,000 project that helps 500 people in your community. Obviously, the second one has the bigger bang for the buck. They're sustainable. We don't want a project that you spend a bunch of money this year, and then next year, for whatever reason, that project adds no value to the community anymore. It's a one-time deal, very quick. We don't necessarily want that to happen. Multiple clubs working together are great. Other stakeholders, other organizations working with us, also great. It exposes Rotary to other people and spreads our word. Consider putting application in early if you're in a position to begin. If we're in the middle of the grant cycle, like this year, we had some projects that weren't completed. Some other ones came in under budget. So that's why we had $12,000 available at the end of the year. But in this case, we found out pretty late. I mean, that's why we're pushing people to try to get a grant done in a week. If you know your project's going to have issues, let us know earlier than that. But you can be into contact with us if it's January and you have a great idea for a project. Contact me, we can discuss it, and then if money comes available, you can apply for the grant, and we might be able to fit it in. Some best practices for planning your grant. A dedicated bank account makes your grant management easier. If it's a small project, it may not be necessary as long as you have good accounting. But if you have a larger project, or your club applies for a lot of grants and does a lot of projects, then having a separate grant account is a great thing. Your bank statements for your reporting is a lot easier. You don't have to print out a huge statement with 100 different transactions and highlight which ones are the grant transactions. It's also a lot easier for the auditors to not have to go through all that. So that's something to consider. And as Jeanette mentioned, if your grant is a portion of a larger project, write the grant only for your portion. Example is if you're working on a concession stand for a local school, and your club is going to be buying the appliances for it, the refrigerator and the grill and a popcorn machine and a pretzel warmer and all that. Don't write the grant for the $200,000 project to build the building for the concession stand and the landscaping, the electricity and the permitting and all that. Because if you do that, then you have to get receipts and invoices for all of that stuff. You have to get the building and landscaping, invoices for everything. You have to have a copy of canceled checks for everything. Keep the project to the scope of what you're doing. If you're buying the appliances, buy the appliances, deliver them to the school. Also, make sure your project is completed first if you can. If you're in a meeting to discuss the fictitious concession stand and they're looking for someone to buy the appliances and someone to pay for the landscaping, volunteer to do the appliances because that comes first. You can get your project done on time, you buy them, you deliver them. That way, if the building is delayed, it's late, it doesn't affect your part of the project, you still meet the deadlines of April 1st to submit, and you don't lose out on the funding. If your project is the benefit of another nonprofit, have vendors invoice your club directly and write checks directly to the vendors, not the nonprofit. I use an example in some of the videos we're going to see later of a project where we're buying a van for a homeless shelter. And in that example, we would write the check directly to the dealer that we're buying the van from, and we would be invoiced by the dealer. The dealer would deliver the van to the nonprofit would own it, they would have it registered in their name. But as long as the invoice comes to the Rotary Club and we pay directly to the dealer, then it's okay. If you give the money to the nonprofit, then technically we have no idea what that money was used for. So it may invalidate your grant. So it's very important to do it that way. If your project cannot be completed as planned, or you think its scope is changing, contact me right away. Touched on this a little bit earlier. Changing the focus of the grant or the budget significantly can invalidate the grant and hurt your funding. So we don't want any surprises at the end. So if anything changes, anything's at risk, just keep us informed. And there's a question in the chat session. We'll talk more about dates in just a little bit. I think that'll answer that question. Right now, actually, important dates. April 30th, this month, is the deadline to submit grants for the 2021-22 Rotary year. And then in May, the share committee is contacted. We send them score sheets and they have access to all the grants online and they start reviewing them, reading them. And in June, the share committee meets. The grants are evaluated, they ask questions, and then they vote on amounts to award. And then in June, the preliminary notification from the district comes out that you are awarded, that you passed the share committee. At that point, remember, you cannot start spending money, you cannot start the project at that point. And then in August and September, the district gets notified from Rotary Foundation if basically all of our grants as a block have been approved. If they are, then the district will send you the notification that you can proceed, and that's when you can get your project started. So don't plan on starting your projects before September, basically. And then in March is the last month to complete the project. But March of 2022 for this year will be the last month to complete your project and send in your final reports. April 1st of 2022 is the hard deadline to submit the final report and request reimbursement. On April 2nd, you lose the funding. So April 1st is the deadline. Important note, if your project is done in January, please do not wait until March 30th to send in or April 1st to send in your reports. The auditors that do this are volunteers, as we all are, and they have jobs, they have family. And when we're getting 15 grants submitted for approval at the last minute, they have a lot of work to do in that few day period. So try to give it early. And that way, if you come under budget, we'll have money to spend for other projects.
Tim, before you get to the chat, I just want to mention a couple of comments. One is about the auditors and getting those reports in. The reason why that's so important is because we cannot submit our final reports to the Rotary Foundation about our spending for this Rotary year until the auditors have completed all of those. So by you guys holding up that process, it actually can delay the time in which we get our money on the other end for the following year. So this past year, we were very fortunate where all the clubs submitted them fairly early. We got our reports into the Rotary Foundation, and we were funded, I think, like at the end of July from the Rotary Foundation. So that directly impacts when our funding can be used for the next Rotary year. That's why we're so careful about that date. The other point I wanted to make of what Tim talked about was if you were talking, when the share committee evaluates the grants, and we talked about the fact that we have about $150,000 this year to spend, we may have $170,000, $180,000 worth of grant requests. The share committee, when they evaluate, they may not be able to fund your grant your grant entirely. They may fund a portion of that grant. However, we expect that your clubs are passionate about we know that your clubs are passionate about the projects that you're doing. So if we do not fund the grant in its entirety, we expect that your club will continue to complete that grant in its entirety the way it was originally written. So if you were wrote the grant for 3 laptops for the local library, and maybe we only funded, or maybe we only gave you enough money to buy like 2.25, it doesn't mean you only buy 2. It means you still buy those 3. You're still planning on completing the project as written. And also, I don't know, Tim, if you cover this, but your club needs to front all of that money in advance, and then you get reimbursed for that money once you've paid for the entire project. You cannot, we don't give you that money up front. The club has to be in a position to be able to front that money and then ask for the reimbursement. Tim, back to you.
Good point, Jeanette. If it's a large project, there actually is an opportunity to submit an interim report and get some of the funding before you finish the whole project. But we kind of like to avoid those because then the auditors have to do their job twice and you guys have to do the reporting twice. It's easier to just do it once, but it is available if it's a larger project and you need that flexibility. All right, as we mentioned, all the grants are applied for on DACDB. So we're going to show you a video of how to access the grants module on DACDB. Let's hope this works. Start waving your arms, by the way, if you can't hear, if there's any problem with the video.
In this video, we will review how to access the grant section of DACDB. To get more information or to start a new grant, you will need to log in to DACDB and browse to the grant module. To do this,
I'm just going to pause it for 1 second. For those of you that are on a phone, you're probably not going to be able to see this. It's not going to have much value for you, but these are available online in YouTube that you can watch them anytime you want later.
enter DACDB in your web browser's address bar. And when the page loads, you'll enter your username, your password, and log in. If you see this prompt, you can ignore it. It appears if you have district privileges and are logging in without them, which I am doing right now. First, let's make sure you're using the new interface for DACDB. If you're using the classic version, there'll be a link labeled switch to new interface by your name. If you see it, click it. Otherwise, you're using the new interface which this demo uses. To access the grants, click on My Club. In the clubs function, you'll see a group of icons. The order may vary from what's on my screen. So find the grants icon right here and click it. You are now in the District Grants Overview page. Please make sure you read this whole page as it will list requirements and links to other resources. To access your club's existing grants and apply for a new grant, click the Club Grants view in the left sidebar. By default, this will list your club's grants for this Rotary year. Whenever you access this page, it's a good idea to confirm the year being displayed. It is listed at the top. To apply for a grant for next year, you will need to change the organization year. So up here on the right side, there's a Change Org Year button. Click that. Select the next year or the year you want to work on. If you wish to make that your default year, that will load automatically, click Save this as my working org year, and then click Change Org Year. You are now ready to start a new grant by clicking the Club Grant Request button.
Alrighty. Just want to remind people, I had a reminder to do this, to put your name and club name in the chat session if you joined us a little bit late. just to track attendance. So just put in the chat session, your club name and your name, please. Thank you. One note about the video you just watched, when I recorded that, the default year for the org year was this current Rotary year. It's been reset to next year, so you may not have to change the org year, but just want to make sure you knew about that. You may have to do that. And it mentioned the grants overview page in that video. Make sure you read that page. It contains links to some of the documents that we talked about earlier, to the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, the conflict of interest, and has a link to the Rotary, the terms and conditions of the grant. Those have to be read, by the way, and not signed, the terms and conditions, but the MOU and the COI have to be printed, scanned, and signed, sent in. It also contains the how-to videos, some of which we'll watch today, about how to set club signers, creating an application, signing the grant, submitting it, and then there's other ones after the process of submitting it. We're submitting the final report, and we may add some other helpful videos as we go along. And you can also get to the accessing the grants module video on the link shown on the screen, the Rotary Foundation 6970 grants, district grants. You can get to the initial video there, and then that'll get you to the grants overview page. All right. When you're creating a grant application, the first step after you create it is to submit it to your club for approval. And that's done through sending it to the signers of the club. And it's a little obscure way that you have to go and set who are the signers for the club. And typically it could be like the president and the foundation chair, or the president and president-elect. So there's a video to show you how to set that up.
District grants need to be electronically signed by members of the lead club. In this video, we'll show you how to set that up, assuming they are in your club. This video assumes you have watched the Accessing the Grants page video and are already located on your club's grant page with the appropriate org year selected. In the left sidebar, select Admin and then Club Signatures. Note the number of club signers required for district grants. At the time of this video, it was 2, but that could change. Find the first signer in the list on the left, select their name, and click the right arrows. And then repeat this for each signer that you want to add. When you're done, press the Save button. There's a note that it was successfully saved.
All right, that's actually a pretty simple step. It's really easy to do. You just have to know, 1, that it has to be done, and 2, where to find the page to do it. So that should be simple enough for you guys. All right, creating a new application. Once you have the signers set up, then you want to go create the application. And we're going to watch me go through a sample application from kind of start to finish.
In this video, we'll cover how to create a new district grant application for your club. This video assumes you have watched the Accessing the Grants page and Setting Up Signers videos and are already located on your club's grant page with the appropriate org year selected. So start off by clicking the New Club Grant Request button. You'll be asked to fill in the project name. Double check that the organization year is correct. You can ignore the priority and round fields for now. In the city, state, and country, they are asking for the location of the project, not your club. Information. The target completion date is when you anticipate having the project completed. Note all projects must be completed before March 31st of the Rotary year. For the area of focus, your project may fall into more than one area of focus. In this step, you should select only the most significant. And the project description should be a brief couple of sentences description no longer than 250 characters, and this can be copied and pasted from a Word document or another source of text. And when that's done, go to the Clubs Involved tab. If you're going to be having another club partner with you, find that club on your list, select it, and hit the right arrows. This is a good time to save your draft, and once you save it, other tabs will appear, such as Budget and Documents. Next, you will select the Contacts tab, where you will select the members who will be notified regarding updates to this grant and receive communication from the grant and audit committees. So you just scroll looking for the names. And they can be from any of the clubs you specified in the Clubs Involved tab. Next, we click the Application tab. Please note, I filled in most of the values on this page just to speed up the video so you don't have to watch me typing the values, but we'll go through each step. Enter the start and completion dates. Really important note, you cannot spend any money on the project until the grant is fully approved by the Rotary Foundation, which usually happens about August. This applies to your club's funds as well as partner Rotary clubs and any partner organizations. One other note about your start date, we do expect that at the time of your application, all projects should be shovel ready and implemented as quickly as possible. The next step is to enter the mailing address where you want to receive the checks from the district, and that is after your interim or final reports. Next is the project summary. We want a really short description, a couple of sentences, no more than 250 characters. In this example, we're buying a passenger van for a local shelter, and so we just have to indicate that what we're buying, who it's going to serve, and that's going to be used for school and work and medical appointments really quick. And then you can go a little more detail, describing the objectives, the community served, the demographics. You can describe the humanitarian efforts. How does it benefit the community? What's the measurable impact of the project? If your project falls into more than one of the Rotary's area of focus, just list them here. And the shelter we're dealing with has a residency of about 120 people per year, so that's our list of beneficiaries. And just a short description of where that number comes from. There's 120 beneficiaries and they will all use the van. Sustainability is really important for district grants, all Rotary grants. So they asked about any skill and knowledge needed. In this case, it's just regular vehicle maintenance, no special skills needed, but if there was training that needed on any equipment, make sure you provide that information. We want to know who's going to be purchasing expendable supplies. In this case, the shelter will be buying them for the tires and oil and gas, anything that's expendable. And then maintenance, if there's equipment that needs to be maintained, please let us know how will it be maintained and who will be in charge of maintaining it. In this case, the shelter is responsible for maintaining the vehicle. And then longevity, talk about how many years the project can be effective, how many years it will be serving the community. We asked for 1-year estimates on the beneficiaries, but let us know. If it's a van that's going to last for 15 years, let us know that. And of course, we want to know about Rotarian involvement from any of the clubs involved in the project. This is hands-on involvement, not just writing the grant or fundraising for the project, but actual hands-on doing the work. In this case, we're buying a van for the shelter, so there is none, so we just write no. And the percentage is 0 since we have no Rotarians working on this directly, but please give the percentage of your club that would be hands-on work on the project. If you're building a playground, for example, maybe you're painting the fence, you're installing the equipment, how many people and what's the percentage? Rotarians don't do work in the community for public praise, but public awareness, publicity is very important. It's how you may get new members, you may get new partners, you may get donations. So we want to know what your general plan is to make the public aware of this project. In this case, the van will be wrapped with the ABC shelter logo and the Rotary logo, and with note including that it was donated by Rotary.
We want to see at least 3 photos of the final project, so please acknowledge that you will provide those. This budget section is a very high-level view. You'll be asked to provide a more detailed budget later, but for now you enter the total budget. The cost per beneficiary is the total cost of the project divided by the number of beneficiaries per year divided by the number of years of the project. So in this case, it's 37,000 divided by 120 people divided by 15 years for the 2155. And you're asked for the amount of the district designated funding request. And then also, if you have partner organizations, in this case the shelter, we want to know the name of that organization. And you should upload a document in the documents section, which we'll cover later, describing what their role is and if they'll be contributing money and what work they'll be doing. Then we ask for an acknowledgement here and an acknowledgement here for the trustees. And then you are done with that section. And now is a good time to click the Save button to put all that information in there, and then click the Budget tab. Here you're going to list all of the sources of income and all of the budget expenses. So start by clicking the Add Income Source. Add a description, club donation, which club is going to be donating that money. This is Flagler Beach, $20,000. It's not DDF, so it's other club funding, and click Add. Click it again. Club donation from Flagler County. And they're donating $9,000. Also other club. And then I'm going to put the amount of the district grant request in there from the Flagler Beach Club. We're requesting $8,000, and that was also in the details tab. And that's the DDF request. And then scroll down a bit. And this is a very simple project where the expense is the van. You don't have to go too crazy with details, but you want to get enough details so we know what the expense is. Flagler Beach will be spending that. Oops, wrong amount. $36,500. I should mention an important note about expenses. When you're purchasing something that benefits an organization, such as the van in this example, the check needs to be written to the vendor or the car dealership, not the shelter. In this way, there is no question regarding how the funds were used and makes your grant reporting easier since you don't need to get a canceled check from that partner organization. Right. The only other expense for this project is the wrap. So we're doing a partial wrap in the van. That's $500. Add that. And the maximum expense for signage allowed by the Rotary Foundation is $1,000. So we have our income of 37, we have our budget of 37, and on the previous pages we said the total budget was 37,000, so we're good, and we save. The next step will be to upload some of the required documents. So go to the Documents tab. The documents we're going to be uploading are the Memorandum of Understanding and the Conflict of Interest documents. Since we have 2 clubs involved, we'll need copies of those from each club. So when you get them on your file system, click Upload File, browse and find the file, and you can select the Memorandum of Understanding for Flagler Beach. Upload it, upload again, and get the one for Flagler County. Repeat the process for the conflict of interest for each club. In one note, you can't have
multiple COIs, multiple MOUs for each club, especially in the time of COVID when people aren't getting together. They may not be in the same place to sign the document, so you could have 2 documents each signed by one person, and that's okay. So. One last note about documents. The conflict of interest form asks for the grant ID. That can be found at the top right after the title of the grant. The ID number is right there. In this case, it's 11432. Once your documents are uploaded, and if your application is complete, the next step is to click Collect Grant Signatures. Once you do that, each person on the signing list should get an email asking them to access the application and click the sign button for electronic signature. It's a good practice to just also send an email individually to each one of those people asking them to do it and maybe giving them instructions on how to access the grant or sending them a link to the video about accessing the grant. Once they access the grant and edit it, then they can then sign it.
Alrighty, this seems like a good place to stop to see if there's questions. There's a couple of comments in the chat session I want to address. One is that someone's not seeing the admin under the admin and club signatures. Certain things in DACDB you need to have a certain permission level to do. So if you cannot set the signers, then you may want to ask your club president to go in and do it, or the possibly even the secretary. I'm not sure what the exact permission levels are, but the president should be able to do it. If you have somebody in your club who's an area governor, they should be able to do it as well. So that's a permission thing if you're not seeing that functionality. Also, someone pointed out that at least one of the URLs at the bottom of the video was incorrect. So I will double check them all and update the slides with the correct video links to the video. But the videos are all accessible on the grants overview page, so you can get them from there. And as a note, those when you upload a video to YouTube, they give you a URL. You cannot replace that video. You have to update it and it gets a new URL. So I always recommend going to the grants overview page and finding the videos from there. There's also a question about partnering with Interact clubs if we need documents signed by them as a separate organization. My gut would be no, but if Jeanette wants to, what do you think?
I don't think you need a letter. No, I would just put that in the budget line as a, as their contributing organization, but I don't think it needs a separate letter.
Yeah, because they're not really a legal entity, I believe.
Right.
Right. Any other questions? Pop in the chat now, or okay. And once you submit a grant to your club approval, it needs to be signed. So this video is something you may want to share also with whoever your club signers are, so that they'll know how to go ahead and do this.
In this video, we will demonstrate how to sign a District 6970 grant. This video makes the following assumptions: that you have watched the Accessing the Grants page video, that someone in your club has set up the list of grant signers for your club in DACDB, and that you are already located on the club's grant page with the appropriate org gear selected. Start by clicking the pencil icon to edit the grant. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a button, Sign Grant Application. Click that. You're presented with the list of people who have signed the grant so far. If there's no one yet, then there'll be no one on the list. Obviously, you're the first signer. Just click Sign Grant. And you're done. You can also check the signature log to see who has signed it and verify that your e-signature is there. And then you can just go home or close the grant.
Once again, a very simple procedure as long as you know how to get into it and where to click the button. So all this, if everyone signed your grant, then we need to submit it to the share committee for approval.
In this video, we will demonstrate how to submit a club-approved grant to the District 6970 Share Committee for approval. We assume you have watched the Accessing the Grants page video and are already located on your club's grant page with the appropriate org year selected. Start by clicking the pencil icon to edit the grant. Note the grant status at the top of the page. It'll indicate whether or not the grant can be submitted for approval. If the page does not indicate this, you can check who has signed the grant so far by clicking the Signature tab. It'll list all the names of people who have signed. When you're ready, simply click Submit Grant for District Approval. And that's it. Once you are done with this, you can no longer make changes to the grant, other than to upload documents and a few other minor things. If you submit prematurely, contact the District 6970 Grants Chair for assistance.
One thing I do want to mention that it's displayed on the screen briefly, but I want to make sure the naming conventions of the files, whenever you upload a file to DocDB for the grant, we recommend renaming it in your file system first and then uploading it with that name. But the name, it has to be specific. It can have upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and underscores only. Try to avoid spaces. Don't put slashes, asterisks, ampersands, anything like that. Just alphanumerical letters, numbers, and an underscore. All right.
And Tim, also, if it's an MOU, that should come first. So when the audit committee, we want to try to make these grants as easy for the audit committee to review as possible. And sometimes, especially in a larger grant, or you have multiple invoices and checks and so forth. So put what that item is. So MOU, Flagler Beach, COI, West Jacks. Whatever, identify whether it's a canceled check, whether it's a bank statement, whatever that item is, think about the people that are auditing these, and the quicker we can make their jobs. And I know Art's on the call, so he'll appreciate that shout out as the audit chair. Just make sure we identify everything as simply as possible for those folks. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Forgot to mention the naming part. Thank you. All right, next steps. First of all, contact us if you have any questions or issues. Make sure you submit your applications by the end of April. Watch for the invitation to the grant seminar, the second one, to learn how to execute your grants. And the foundation is also having a project fair, which is scheduled for April 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. And the objective of this is to get clubs together. You can talk about any project ideas you have. If you're seeking any partners, looking for additional funding, throwing out your ideas, getting best practices. If there's a club that has done something similar that can give you some advice, that's the general idea. So if you have a project you're thinking of and like to present your project to a group of people, pop me an email and tell me what you're thinking, and we can get you on the list. And watch out for you should have invitations to that in the newsletter and some emails from Jeanette, but watch out for that. Anything else you want to say about that, Jeanette?
Well, only that this project fair we started because a lot of the clubs in our district are doing so many fabulous projects, and we all could use some extra money, some extra help. And then there's some clubs that just want to help if they were asked. So this is an opportunity, whether you're applying for a district grant or a global grant, to present that project to our Rotarians. On our members in our district, to see if there's some additional interest, if we generate some funds, cross-breed ideas. If somebody's got a great idea or a great project that's happening and you want to do something similar, in your community, it's a great place it's really a collaboration tool. So I hope that this is the first year we're running it. I hope that you all will take advantage of it. Right now, I think we do not have anybody that's stepped forward to present projects. So if there's no need, then there's no need. But I know a lot of you have mentioned to me that, gee, I wish if I knew that project was happening, I would have contributed to that. Well, this is your opportunity to talk about your projects, to garner some additional support, or to learn about projects that are taking place in your communities.
Thanks, Jeanette. So any further questions? You can put them in chat. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions if you like. Anything at all for Jeanette, myself. Well,
I'll make another comment that
Okay.
this grant management seminar, number one, is mandatory for any club who is applying for a grant in the 21-22 Rotary year. At the district training assembly, we will have another one, although it'll be too late to get the application process in because that assembly is May the 8th. So there will be another district grant management seminar on May 8th that will focus not quite so much on the application process, but it'll kind of be a crossbreed. So if you have any members who have missed this session and you are applying for a grant, you must have at least 2 members at either this session or the one coming up on May 8th. Otherwise, you are not qualified for a grant for the coming Rotary year.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank you all for attending, giving up some of your Saturday morning to do this. And keep in mind, if you have any questions, just let us know. And our contact information is on the screen. It was also posted in the chat session at the top. And there's a link at the bottom to where the seminar slides are. I also posted that in the chat session as well. And you do need to log into DACDB to do that because we don't want this just floating around the internet and having other districts find it and think that this is the procedure for them as well. This is the procedure for District 6970, so we make it specific to our folks. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. You're free for your Saturday.
These will be made available on the District Foundation website, this video.
The video is it's under the quick links. This video, actually for the chat session, I don't know. For the video, the Zoom, I don't know where it is, and I don't know. We can make it available, definitely.
Yep, let's make that available on the District Foundation website on the grants page. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
William Chedwigan, is that you? You're on mute. I'll make sure I
Yeah,
thought,
That's me.
how are you? I didn't see your
Hi.
name in the chat, so I'll make sure Tim records Bill Chedwigan from New Smyrna Beach.
Thank you.
I recognized you, my friend.
Hey, Jeanette, type that into the chat session right now.
Okay. How do you spell your last name, Bill?
CHEGWIN.
Got it. Awesome.
Now I'll do a last save the chat for that. Okay, cool. All right. See you later.
Alrighty.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you, guys.
Bye.
Good to
Bye.
see everybody. Thanks, Marie.
Muted. You're welcome.
I think everything went well, don't you think?
Okay.
Okay, you want to pause the recording, Marie, or stop the recording?
Yeah, hold on.
I turn it off. It's still on.